What's up, internet? We're back. Welcome to the second episode of Broken Orbital MMA. We're back. We're covering some fights that happened recently today. Pretty sure I'm still talking into the void. Not sure anyone's really listening to this channel yet, but that's all right. We're here for the love. We're here for the fights. We're here to just talk about fights, talk about cards. It is absolutely hot as shit in Australia right now. The country is literally on fire. There are hundreds and hundreds of bushfires around the country. Some of them hundreds of hectares in size. Hundreds of thousands of hectares in size, rather. There is smoke everywhere, but we are prevailing. So today, we're going to be talking a bit about the UFC in Busan card that happened a couple of weeks ago. Edgar versus Korean Zombie. And also mainly just about Bellator 237, which happened this weekend. And that was Fedor versus Rampage. There's not a lot going on at the moment. End of the year, holiday season, not many cards. So, you know, I just started this account a couple of weeks ago, and unfortunately, there hasn't been that much for me to talk about. So, kind of slim pickings this week. We'll try and make it a bit quick. But yeah, I just wanted to get something done. Just get some more content out there and keep the thing ticking along. So we'll just get into it straight away. So the first thing, do a little recap on UFC Busan. Start at the top of the card. We'll talk about Frankie Edgar losing to the Korean Zombie. So I definitely picked the Zombie to win this one, and that's obviously what happened. So what happened in this fight? Well, Edgar just looked really old. Frankie Edgar looks like he's 38 or whatever the hell he is. And he looks like he's a 2008 fighter, which he pretty much is. He was timed coming in by the Zombie. His combinations looked rote, kind of predictable, slow. I mean, the guy's basically done. You know, he can probably beat some top 10 guys, but you know, at the top of the division, he's washed. He's done now. So slow. He looked undersized. I still just don't understand how Frankie Edgar was a 155-pound champ. I mean, I understand it was a long time ago, it was a different era, and fighters, you know, generally were a lot smaller, but he looked undersized here at 145. Like, the Zombie looked like a weight class bigger than him here. It was crazy. So, before, when I was thinking about picking this fight a couple of weeks ago, I thought maybe Edgar would be able to get the Zombie down and control him for, you know, maybe get some sort of advantage there, but he had like no chance at all. Like, I think the Zombie dropped him for the first time, and then he was just on his back and he was controlling him, and then they got stood back up, and Frankie Edgar was already just you know, he had his bell rung. He'd been dropped, and he just looked, from then on, it was just, he was out of it. There was no chance. And yeah, Frankie Edgar's chin it's basically not, it's definitely not what it was. You know, there were fights in the past that he'd been in where he would get severely hurt. He would get cracked and just kind of like hang on by dear will, just somehow find a way to, you know, be tenacious and claw his way back into the fight. But now when he gets rocked, it's just like, he looks like there's just the lights are on but no one's home kind of thing. And Korean Zombie looked absolutely fantastic. He was, you know, controlled. His striking was accurate, very powerful. Like I said, he took Edgar's back. And the Korean Zombie has not been living up to his namesake recently, which is actually a good thing. He is a much more refined fighter now, back from compared to what he was in the WEC and early UFC days. He's very economical now, and he's very accurate and measured and just looking great. You know, granted, this isn't at Frankie Edgar, not the top level competition, but I think if the Korean Zombie was if he actually faced Brian Ortega, who this fight was originally supposed to be against, I think Brian Ortega would be in for a bad day, because the Zombie's ground game is excellent. And we all know that Brian Ortega's like card in the back of his pocket is his ground game, right? So, and I don't think the Zombie would let him get there. And I think if he did, it would actually be closer than people would think. And I think if that fight stayed on the feet, which I think it probably would for most part of it, I think Ortega has another Max Holloway-esque sort of fight because, Brian Ortega is, for all his athletic gifts and skills that he has, he's very slow. He's a very slow striker. He kind of lumbers forward. He doesn't look like he has a lot of fast twitch kind of muscle fiber in his body. He's a very kind of skinny, fat-looking dude, and I think the Korean Zombie would absolutely just piece him up on the feet. I know there's definitely a bit of recency bias going on here because I just saw Korean Zombie do that to Frankie Edgar, but if I was putting money on that fight, I would definitely be putting it on the Zombie. So kind of hope that fight actually happens one day, but I also hope that the Korean Zombie works his way up to a title shot. He called out Volkanovski. I want Volkanovski in his post-fight interview, which was great. I hate it when fighters get a big win and then just say, oh yeah, I'll just wait for the UFC to see what plays out. It's like, no, it's your time to call someone out. So I'm glad he did that. That would be an absolute cracker of a fight. I'm not sure what'll be next for the Zombie. And yeah, Frankie Edgar, man, like, the dude just needs to retire. Like, I know that he won't because he's a fighter and fighters are required to have a kind of insane belief in themselves and a distorted worldview of reality. So he'll probably keep fighting until he just keeps getting KO'd over and over again, which is a shame. But if I was him and I was his family, I would be telling him, let's hang him up now, because you're not getting any titles. Probably going to get destroyed at 135 as well. So I don't know, man. Just hang him up. So moving down the card further, what else do we have? We had Oezdemir and Rakic. This was a close fight. I picked Oezdemir to win because I think he's the more complete fighter. I think it was a split decision, but I think he won that. He was doing great work with the leg kicks. Rakic looked like he had a new species growing out of his shin. But, I don't think Rakic's stock actually goes down after this. I think we actually now know that Rakic is actually quite legit. I think he's probably in that period of growth now where each fight that he has, he's going to be growing in exponential leaps and bounds in skill. So yeah, I don't think his stock really went down. I think maybe it even went up because the last fight we saw him steal Mana was Soul, which was over in like a minute or something. So didn't really learn much about him. But I think here we learned that, even though he's kind of flawed and he leaves openings for people to strike him and catch him in weird positions, he's pretty legit. So yeah, pretty good fight. Keen to see what happens to Oezdemir next. I think he's also been, only a split decision win, but he's still a win. So he's been screwed over in the past with Dominic Reyes. I think he won that fight, but of course he didn't. So interested to see what happens to him next. Rakic, I think he probably will get another top 10 guy. And I hope that he can string together some more wins because he's pretty promising. And that division, Lord knows that division needs some more talent, some new talent. So hope he keeps going. Not a great card, let's be honest. The next fight down the card was Doo-Ho Choi and Charles Jourdain. Doo-Ho Choi coming back from a brutal knockout loss to Jeremy Stephens, which was a long time ago now. And turns out ring rust is a bitch. Who would have thought? I think the time off has definitely hurt him. And I think we're seeing more and more evidence that activity is actually very important in MMA. We're getting more and more, we're getting a bigger sample size now and seeing that time and time again, fighters who take a long time off and then come back to big fights, they get, more often than not, it seems like they have terrible times. Even if they're very skilled. Like great fighters. So on a side note, we'll see what happens to Conor McGregor versus Cowboy coming up in this January, because obviously Conor's been off for a long time and Cowboy is one of the most active fighters ever, so that'll be interesting. But Choi loses in the third round by TKO, I believe, and he actually broke his arm, I think, in the second round, which might have affected him, but I think this fight really showed us that Choi does not have the ability to adjust mid-fight. He's kind of a one-note fighter. He has his one game plan, which is, boxing, crisp striking, power shots, almost like a kill or be killed mentality, you know, like simple combos, power shots. But when that doesn't work and the other guy is still standing there, he kind of like he's kind of stuck, and that's kind of what happened here. Like Jourdain, to his credit, stuck it out. Third round, kept hammering away, kept like, you know, just stuck it out, survived all the shots the first 2 rounds, and then he just got him. And it was just, you know, good on Jourdain. No one really knows who he is, but that'll be a good win for his record. And yeah, it's a shame for Duho Choi. I think maybe we're seeing that dude's not living up to his athletic potential due to time off, and maybe his game not being as tweaked or as developed as it should be. So he's in a tough spot now. Other things from that card: Cyril Gane defeats Tanner Boser by decision. Good. That's what we want to see. Gane keeps climbing up the ranks. Dude keeps fighting every 3 weeks. Hopefully soon we'll see him against some real competition, and he's definitely one to keep an eye on still. So follow that guy if you're not already. And then the other notable thing was Barcelos defeats Saeed Nurmagomedov by unanimous decision, which I thought was kind of funny because that's one of Khabib's extended cousins, I guess. Would be pretty embarrassing for him. So in terms of my Tapology picks for that card, I was all right. I think I came 400 and something out of about 1,500 people on Tapology, so not bad. A couple of picks I regret. Alexandre Pantoja defeats Matt Schnell. I definitely had Matt Schnell in that one, so that sucked. I got Morales, Gane, Kang, Oezdemir, Jung, Alateng. I got all those right. And yeah, with these, you know, regional cards, if you want to call them that, it definitely pays to pick, if you're not sure about what the hell's going on, which I was definitely struggling with because I didn't know half these fighters. If you have nothing else to go on, just go with like the home crowd fighter, because that's, I would say, being at home gives you probably like a 10 or 15% chance to win. Like it just seems to always play out like that. So lots of the hometown fighters winning, which is good. So yeah, pretty terrible card. So we'll move on now to an even more terrible card, Bellator and Ryzen Japan, or Bellator 237 Fedor versus Rampage. So this travesty of an event happened on Sunday Australian time. And classic Bellator, man. Just an absolute shit show. So I guess we'll start at the top. So the card obviously headlined by Fedor and Rampage. Man, what do you want to say about this? Rampage's... The cool thing, I guess, was Rampage's walkout. That looked kind of cool. Kind of old-style Pride-ish cinematic thing. But I think he gassed on that walkout because he was a thick boy for this fight. I think he weighed in at the heavyweight limit, 265. And he sure looked every bit of 265 because he was fat. And I think the sad thing about this is that he was clearly just in it for the paycheck. Like there was an interview he did a few days before the fight in media week, and he was saying, you know, it's my daughter's birthday and the day of the fight, and it's Fedor's daughter's birthday and the day of the fight. So, you know, we both want to win, but actually we both just want to lose and get the paycheck and leave. And I think he was kind of joking, but I think everyone now realizes he was pretty serious because that was just woeful performance by Rampage. He got cracked with a shot to the side of the head midway through round 1, goes down, and he kind of like gestured to stop the fight as he was down on the ground, but then after the ref stopped it and he got up, he was like, you know, doing the hands up, questioning, why is the fight stopped, what's going on? Whoa. As if, like, you know, he was protesting the stoppage, which was just embarrassing. Yeah, and Fedor looked like Fedor, just older Fedor, great hand speed, just, you know, lightning fast hands, bouncing around, just doing whatever the hell he wanted to Rampage, I guess. And he was misinterpreted as saying that he was going to retire completely from fighting after this fight, but it was something to do with the translation, and I think he said he's just last time fighting in Japan or something, but he definitely said he clarified later that he still wants to keep fighting, but, you know, he should retire as well because he's old as fuck. So, yeah, sad main event. So the co-main event, I saw this as well. This was Michael Chandler versus Sydney Outlaw. And this was originally supposed to be Michael Chandler versus Benson Henderson. So I think we can forgive him for fighting the no Wikipedia entry article Sydney Outlaw, who I've never heard of before this fight. I'm not really sure. This was originally supposed to be a catch weight at 160. This fight took place at 160. Not really sure why. Bellator seems to do a lot of catch weight fights. I don't keep up with it enough to understand why they keep doing that. Yeah, Sydney Outlaw, I think, at least going into this fight, was 19-4, which is not terrible. Michael Chandler's definitely beaten way better guys, though. And, midway through round one again, Michael Chandler drops Outlaw with this punch to the side of the head, and Sydney Outlaw just, while his brain is just short-circuited and his body is just free-falling, he just falls into this kind of comedic squat, and kind of mid-squat his brain reconnects the circuits and he gets hit on the back of the head with this hilarious kind of like hammer fist by Chandler, and then the fight's called. But yeah, it's just, I mean, what else do you expect to happen? It's like kind of, it would be an absolute outrage if Michael Chandler didn't win this fight. So, I think Michael Chandler stays at Bellator because he gets paid quite well, and I think he also realizes that if he went to UFC, he would be like barely a top 10, 15 guy. Probably be like a great gatekeeper for the top 10 maybe. And good for him if he's getting paid, but like when you're just fighting these nobodies, it's like why what is the point here? Can we at least see some good competition? So yeah, another weird fight. And the next fight down was your boy Michael Venom Page versus Shinsho Anzai. This was another absolute travesty. I am so sick of seeing Michael Page fight people off the street. This also ends in, actually round 2, so slightly better. Shinsho Anzai leaps in for sort of like a blitz kind of thing, and Michael Page just cracks him on the jaw going backwards, which was, I guess, pretty cool. But, Shinsho Anzai's biggest win to date is, let's have a look at this guy's record. He was in the UFC. He lost to Jake Matthews, and his best win is probably, God, I don't know. I only know Luke Jumio, who is a New Zealand mixed martial artist who fought recently, but yeah, that's the only guy I know on his record. So Canderson Silva strikes again. I don't know how, it's almost unconscionable to keep letting him beat these nobodies and flaunting it. Like, the dude rocks up in a Dragon Ball Z outfit, and it's just like, oh God, this is just so cringeworthy. I mean, is MVP ever going to fight some legit people? I mean, he fought Semtex, Paul Daly, and I think he wrestled in that whole fight, which is really weird, but that's, credit to him, he got that win. But Paul Daly just has no ground game, so not that impressive. And then when he fought Diego Lima, he was actually doing all right. He was not getting obliterated until he did. He did definitely get obliterated into that. If you ever want to watch some karmic justice, just go watch Diego Lima KO Michael Venom Page. So yeah, I don't know what's next for him. Don't really care unless it's someone legit. Also on this card, Lorenzo Larkin defeats Nakamura. Lorenzo Larkin defeats Keita Nakamura, whose best win is probably Li Jingliang. He's lost to Tom Breeze, Elizo Zaleski dos Santos, Anthony Rocco Martin, and now Lorenzo Larkin. So Lorenzo Larkin out here fighting C-grade fighters as well. I'm not really sure why. Unanimous decision win by Lorenzo Larkin, so I guess that's cool. Would really like to see him in a high-level fight again, because I think he's not living up to his potential as well. Also misses weight, which is not a good sign, ever. So yeah, I guess now I just wanted to talk about how disgusted I was with this whole Bellator event, and just talk about Bellator in general. I don't know what Bellator was trying to do. I don't know what the point of these cards is. There was a period of time, maybe, 2017, 2016, 2017 must have been, when they bought some good signings. They bought Rory McDonald over. They bought Gegard Mousasi. And at that point in time, it actually felt like Bellator was maybe going to be a serious challenger to the UFC. Because, hardcore fans knew that the level of competition at the top ranks of Bellator was actually quite good. Like, the UFC definitely has the best fighters in the world, but Bellator the top Bellator fighters on any given night could probably beat most of, the UFC's top roster as well. Like the skill levels are quite comparable. But this event was just like, it just reminded me why I dislike Bellator so much. You shouldn't be able to predict main card results with such accuracy. Like, you could look at this card and be like, well, of course, like, Chandler's going to start this guy, and of course Michael Venom Page is going to beat this guy. When it's like that, you got to ask yourself, like, what is the point? Like, I understand the Benson-Henderson fight fell through, so Sydney Outlaw was this bum who came in for Chandler to fight, but fight excitement and intrigue is predicated on close odds. Like, you have to have a degree of uncertainty to make things entertaining. Otherwise, it's just like there's no value. There's no point to paying attention to this contest when you know that the conclusion is so foregone and so certain. And like Michael Venom Page, like, there's no value to his career if he just keeps beating these bums. So yeah, I guess I will keep wondering, what is Bellator trying to be? Do they want to be like a serious challenger to the UFC? Because it seems like they kind of, sometimes they do want to do that, sometimes they don't. And this time they just went back to their gimmicky kind of like spectacle sort of thing, like Rampage and the walkouts. And it's like, is this even a sport? The UFC, at least for all its problems, they do deliver consistency and quality. And I think with that ESPN backing, the UFC is at least turning MMA into a sport, whereas I feel like Bellator just dances on a knife edge a lot of the time. Sometimes it feels like you're watching a legit sport, and sometimes you just feel like you're watching a circus. And it's just like, it just feels gimmicky, man. I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, two pretty terrible cards, let's be honest. The next thing we got up is UFC 246, which is unfortunately in about 3 weeks' time, which feels like an absolute lifetime to me because, it's the end of the year and I'm on break from university and I'm just working, and all I really like to do at my time off is just watch fights, and there are just no freaking fights to watch at this time of the year. I miss a lot of the fights live in the middle of the year because I'm doing other stuff, and now I just got to sit around and try scrape together the bottom of the barrel of these terrible Bellator cards. But UFC 246 coming up next. Obviously, Conor McGregor's triumphant return versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone. And let me tell you, that card is hot trash as well. I'm actually amazed at how shitty this main card is. Well, this whole card, actually. We got Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone. Obviously, what everyone's tuning in for. And the co-main event is Holly Holm versus, wait for it, Raquel Pennington. Yes, you heard that correct. There's two other fights on here that I'm kind of excited for, and that's Anthony Pettis versus Carlos Diego Ferreira, and that's opening the main card. I don't know if that's at 170. No, it's at lightweight. That'll be interesting. Interesting to see where Pettis is at. And Carlos Diego Ferreira, quietly racking up a pretty good record lately. I think he's at Fortis MMA as well. So like I said last episode, Fortis MMA slowly becoming a pretty good gym. So if I was a betting man, I might be putting some money on Ferreira. And then the other one is Andre Fili versus Sadiq Youssef. And this is the co-main of the prelim card. So this is not even the top of the prelims. This is under Roxanne Modafferi and Macy Barber, which is kind of interesting as well. But Fili versus Sadiq Youssef, both guys been on tears. Fili looking better and better. Max Holloway actually, interestingly enough, said recently that Andre Fili was his hardest fight in the UFC, so that's pretty interesting. Fili been looking real good lately, so very interesting fight. Oh, here we go. Early prelim cards. Sabina Mazo, JJ Aldrich, not bad. Tim Elliott's back again versus Askar Askarov. Yeah, weird card. Surprising they couldn't get some better names for that one. And also, we are now at the end of the decade. The UFC has been uploading years in reviews videos to their YouTube, which is pretty cool. So they've been kind of summarizing 2010 up until, what are they up to now, 2016, 2017 or something. And yeah, it's been pretty interesting. Pretty interesting to contemplate what's happened in the last 10 years in MMA and the UFC. I've only been in this game for about 4 or 5 years now, so interested to see what the next decade brings. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff happening very soon. So yeah, I think we'll leave it there. So I'll definitely be back in a couple of weeks to talk about UFC 246, because that's going to be pretty hype. We'll do some analysis of that, some breakdowns, go into the main card in a bit more depth. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, whoever you are, if there's anyone out there. And we'll see y'all next time.